I have a ton of pictures here, a ton of really neat things. As I'll go along, what I'm kind of describing, I'll pass it around and you guys can take a look. A lot of really, really, really cool stuff. So, yeah, as he mentioned, my name is Kyle Mentzer. I've been working now with Russ's Uptown Optical for about 3.5 years. I work with my father, Doug, which I think most of you probably already know. He's hiding out in the back area there. Doug has owned Russ's Uptown Optical since about the mid-'90s, so been there quite a while. I worked there with him and also, too, Michelle. She couldn't be here today because of a scheduling little mix-up, but she's been with our shop for quite a long time, too, and we'll get into a little bit more into that here in a few minutes. But definitely an awesome team we have, and we are incredibly honored and excited to be here. This is a really big deal for us, not just from a business standpoint, but just from a neighborly standpoint. We've been in Des Moines for a really, really, really long time. A lot of our families, born and raised here for a really long time, and we feel connected to this community, not just from a dollars and cents standpoint, but just you're our neighbors, you're our friends, and we kind of all help each other out. And that's why we're really excited, and that's why I'm absolutely thrilled to be here. So, again, bear with the non-slides that you can't see. I'll try to do the best. Just kind of generally starting, there would be a big picture of my grandfather, Russ, playing a mandolin right here. So we kind of joked around. We probably could find a little bit more optician picture to use for him to show you guys, but him laughing and smiling and playing music, for those who knew him, would probably be a little bit more of an accurate description of who he was as a guy. He'd been in the business for a really long time, and one of the things that made him so successful was that happy-go-lucky, just general, from the deep bottom of his heart, caring about his neighbors and his customers and everybody. And yeah, so what would be there? It would be depicting that. But so kind of getting into a little bit, our family has been in the optical business for a very, very, very long time. Now, I know you guys know Russ's Optical has been here for a really long time, but just a quick general question. How long do you guys think that our family has been in the optical business? Just years. Ooh, that was actually close. Well, you kind of wrapped it up. Close to... We're done. 80 years, actually. Our family has been associated with the optical business for 80 years. I don't have his card here. However, Russ's grandfather, Ray, and when we get done, you guys feel free to come up and take a look at all this. This is him kind of on this side. Ray was Russ's father, and he was actually an optician, kind of the first guy to get started in it. So not only did my grandfather, Russ, then go into the optical business, but also, too, he had 2 older brothers that were opticians as well. So definitely a lot of history there. One of them actually retired as an optician in Mason City quite a long time ago. So, and we obviously have a long storied history with it. So I'm going to kind of go through some dates here, some years, since they're not up there. If anybody wants to stop me and ask again or have any questions, or I like this to be interactive too. So if you have questions, comments, a lot of you guys have been around here in the city a lot longer than I have. So if you have things to add, we'd absolutely love to hear it. So starting in 1951 was when my grandfather, Russ, first started working for Service Optical. And that was here in Des Moines, and they also had a place in Ottumwa, which that's where his father originally started. So we didn't find anything that showed this, but we could assume that his dad helped him get into the optical shop by working with Service Optical. Now, here's a really, really interesting thing that I don't know if a whole lot of people know about. When my grandfather started working at Service Optical in 1951, he had a manager by the name of Joe Wiley. So, Joe Wiley Eye Care. Yeah, there we go. Yeah. So we all kind of laugh about that. We have our family that's been in it forever. Their family that's been in it forever, and at one point they worked together for quite a long time. So, and it even gets more interesting than that. So about 5-6 years after my grandfather started working for Service Optical, Joe Wiley said, I'm going to go out and I'm going to start Wiley Eye Care. And again, this is going to be the reoccurring theme. My grandfather, with just how he was, had kind of a traveling base that would go with him. And I mean, you guys know this. The optical business isn't any different than many others. When you find someone that you care about, that you trust, you know that they care about you, you'll follow them. I mean, if it's a hairdresser, tailor, doesn't matter. And that's kind of what he had, and he had that early on. So Joe Wiley takes him with him to start Wiley Eye Care. So they start working there for a little while. Then about a year after they opened, and this was new to me too. I didn't know Yonkers Optical had an optical shop way back when. So they came in and they offered my grandfather a manager position. And I had his business card with it around here. Maybe I'll try to find it. And they offered him a quarter more per hour. So a quarter more per hour nowadays, is nothing but, back in the late 50s, an extra quarter an hour was probably some pretty good money. And again, being my grandfather, the man that he is, took it in a heartbeat. So he went to go work at Yonkers Optical and manage there. So he worked there for not even a year, I don't think. Yeah, it was under a year. And again, the traveling base that he had, everyone went with him from Wiley Eye all the way over to Yonkers. Joe Wiley did not like that too much. So he went back to Russ and he said, I want you back. My grandpa said, well, I'm getting paid more, so no. He said, how about if I give you an extra nickel more per hour? So throughout the course of a year or two period, my grandpa got his way a 30-cent raise, so good for him. And then he worked at Wiley's. He worked at the Equitable building downtown, and then also, too, down at the Ingersoll branch. He managed both. And I've been lucky enough to meet, obviously, quite a few faces and hear that, remember working with him down at the Equitable building way back when, even when they were little. We still hear it to this day. So it's definitely a neat thing to see. So 1978 rolled around, and he kind of told himself, yeah, I think it's time to kind of do something on my own. And he had kind of a funny line, and I cleaned it up a little bit, but he pretty much said, I'd rather go broke working for myself than be a rich man working for you. So he up and left Wiley's, and he started, as we know today, Russ's Uptown Optical on 42nd University, still there, obviously, today. So it's definitely been an interesting ride to get there. The pictures that were passed around were a lot of pictures that were taken right when Russ's Optical opened. And it was very neat to see something kind of start from so little, grow to something or grow to where it is today. One of the pictures that's on there is a picture of my father in a three-piece suit with my grandfather, I think very, very shortly after they opened. And all I can say is, thank God we don't have to wear three-piece suits anymore. No, I don't mind dressing up now and then, but yeah, I think that'd get a little tedious time after time. And then there is another picture here. And this is one of the things I loved about doing this presentation was I was able to uncover a ton of just really, really, really cool history, not just about our shop, but just our neighborhood. 42nd University in 1946. And it has the famous trolley. That was another interesting thing. I did not know I'd heard a little bit, but I didn't really see any photographic evidence that there was a trolley that would go up and down University Avenue. And that was just, it's incredibly neat to see. In the picture, it even shows kind of some of the old brick and mortar stores that are still there today. I think Ray's Drug. So my grandfather, again, opened up the store in 1978, and he worked there for around 10 years. And by that time, he was an older man, and he was ready for retirement. Now, if you guys know my grandfather, he loved two things: the Chicago Cubs, so he wanted to sit around and watch Cubs games, and that was my early memories of him, was watching Cubs games with him. And for some odd reason, the O.J. Simpson trial. I don't know. It's funny, when I asked my family and my grandmother, when she was still here, some of the things they just said, oh, yeah, he loves Cubs. But my gosh, did he love the O.J. Simpson trial. I didn't know he was a L.A. Rams fan or anything. But anyway, so he retired in 1988, and then that's when my father, Doug, who'd been working there for quite a long time, kind of really stepped up and really took over the, not from a legal sense yet, but the ownership of the company. And when he retired in 88, that's when my uncle Steve Mentzer, which I'm sure a lot of you guys remember, he was the loud, crazy one. Have trouble keeping the two of them together. He started working in 1988 too, or kind of right around that time frame. So kind of business kept going on as usual. Again, when someone in an industry like the optical shop, when they retire, you don't just retire. You don't pick up and you go home and you never come back. When you have a customer base like he did, it was, semi-retirement in the most literal sense. You go home and watch a game probably, and then come back and help a customer, and then run back home. And one of the things around that time that we hear, and that I still see to this day, is when you had a guy like my grandfather who had those, people who come to see him. You can come into a store and it'll be busier than heck. We're all waiting to help you, but everybody else is waiting to work with Russ. And I'm seeing it, obviously, with my dad, too. It's like, I can help you out. If I'm, no, I'll work with Russ. So so that was kind of why it was a little slower for him to transition away from the optical shop. So this kind of went on for a while. And then, as many of you know, unfortunately, in 1995, Russ passed away. And that was just kind of it, and it was definitely difficult, obviously, from a family standpoint. You lose someone like that, it's incredibly difficult. But from the business, from our shop standpoint, it's tough to lose a leader like that. And even when he wasn't working there, he was still that leader that you could go to if you had questions, anything like that. So got past that, and around 96, after he passed away, in his will, he left my grandmother the shop. And like I had mentioned, almost for 10 years, my dad and uncle had been working in the shop. So it just made sense from any standpoint just to sell it to them and let them run it and kind of go off and running as they are, which is what happened. So my grandma sold it to them in 1996 and been running it. The only other kind of major, cliff note would be we did a full remodel in 1997. And if you guys remember that, it was about half the size we are at now and a whole bunch of wood paneling. Now, I like old stuff, but the wood paneling, it was probably a good thing that we kind of progressed on past that. And a lot of my earliest memories were climbing along on the wood paneling. So while I had some cool memories, it was probably all right that we kind of went into the next phase. So what we did is actually kind of some neat historical things surrounding this as well. Is before we did that, there was a whole bunch of shops that had gone in and out there, but there was a small shop just to the, I guess it would be to the west of us, next door, that was a little bit smaller, that was perfect to kind of move into. And I only remember one thing, but apparently it had been like a hardware store, jeweler, I believe, a couple other things. But what I remember the most was it was a trading card shop when I was little. And I collected totes and totes and totes of these cards. But I just remember when I was a kid, I'd come home from school. My mom would drop me off there. And I'd wait for my dad to kind of finish up work before he took me to whatever sport I was playing practice. And if I did good on a spelling test, he'd take me next door and let me buy a baseball card or a hockey card or something. So, but anyway, not long after that, bought the place next door, crashed the wall down, and made it into what it is today. So there really hasn't been too many cosmetic changes, but it's kind of funny looking back and thinking, like, man, if working in about 50% less of this space, like, couldn't imagine. But apparently they did it for a really long time. Again, a few more pictures here. Kind of the last thing I wanted to touch on, or one of the last things I wanted to touch on, is how much a family business literally means family. And if for anybody here that has other family members in a family business or any friends or anything, when that call comes, hey, we're short a person, we need you to come answer phones, you go. And my mother over here that's filming, she's been awesome with all of this. And there's just been a whole lot of people that we've had with our last name and without our last name that has come through and answered phones, helped file and clean and things like that. So when we say it's a family business, like I said, we mean it in the truest sense of the word. And what's that? I was actually just about to mention. Yeah, I couldn't find a picture of Dixie, which is I could have even brought her here today. Oh, okay, yeah. Dixie worked, kind of late 90s, early 2000s. That sound about right? Yeah. Kind of right around there. She's awesome with the bookkeeping, things like that. So, and Sally, another Russ's younger sister, Sally, she worked in the optical shop too, and just kind of helping out wherever you can. And again, that's just kind of what it really means to be a family optical shop. Kind of moving forward, and what we see for Russ's Optical in the future isn't really too complicated than what it is now. Obviously, there's a proven recipe for success. But again, it's not too complicated. And it's the same things that my grandfather started with when he was started in the optical business. and the things he carried with him throughout the years. And simply put, it's just doing the right thing. And it's doing the right thing by your friends, by your neighbors, and by your customers. And not just from a dollars and cents standpoint, but just because it's the right thing to do. You know, obviously there's ways we're going to be moving forward. Like we just recently got our Facebook page finally looking normal. So that was cool. And a website that works on a cell phone. So we're going to be, doing those sorts of types of things. But for our core belief of who we really are, that's not changing, and that's never, ever, ever going to change. Because it's our neighborhood, it's you guys, it's our community that has made us who we are today. And we wouldn't be anywhere at where we are now if it wasn't for you and people like you. We talk all the time. We could go cheap. We could get inexpensive with materials or short change or add an extra $5, $10 when we really do. Could we do it? Yes. Do other people do it? Yes. That's just not our game. We're comfortable with where we are at. It's provided an amazing, wonderful living for my family, and we like what we have, so why push it? So, if you guys have any questions, like I said, any comments, anything like that, be more than anything to add on the non-pictures you're seeing. Yes. Oh, yes. Yes. My grandmother's name is Jane Mentzer, and Jane passed away in July of 2015. And my mother, two huge helpers in this whole thing. So, whip crackers, whatever you want to call them. Lisa Mentzer is my mother. Oh yeah, gosh, sorry, I just kind of got thrown off a little bit. About 3.5 years ago. I probably should have mentioned that. Steve retired about 3.5 years ago, which I'm sure most of you guys know. And that same day that he retired is when I came in. So it was I like to think a smooth transition. I don't know. I was pretty much filed and vacuumed floors for like 6 months before I was able to touch a pair of glasses. Yes?
One of the Wallaces built the shopping center around 1960. The neighborhood was kind of neat. Actually, Amelia Earhart used to live around there. And was it Henry Wallace? Who was the secretary? Was it Henry Wallace? He lived down the street about 37th. But there's always been shops right there. And Wallace owned that for quite a while. Then Hubble bought it, and then Tim Urban owns it now. Oh. So yeah, the shopping center has a nice history. It used to be the trolley ran up and down, and Dad talked about going to shows. There was a restaurant over there, the old Capri Theater. I remember that was there for quite a. That was one of. I think that was maybe the last single screen theater in town before they finally closed that. Yeah.
Did at any time we have any other doctors? That is actually, that's a good question. We, pretty much our entire history, we have focused on the dispensing side of things. And that's technically what we do. We're a dispensary. As you guys know, you get a prescription, you come in, we find you a really cool, awesome pair of glasses that you can't find anywhere else. Get you kind of set up with some cool, with your good lenses and whatnot, and send them to a laboratory. They make the lenses, send it back to us, then we get you fit and make sure you're seeing okay and everything. So that's been our primary focus, but we have had some doctors that have come in and kind of do appointments a couple times a week. We're not doctors, I guess, is the easiest way to put it. You don't need a doctorate degree to do dispensing, thankfully. I wouldn't have had the patience to go through school, but... we do have a doctor. He comes in. His name's Dr. Todd Christensen, and he does eye exams. Dr. Stephen Aljetz has been there. I don't know, when you guys opened up, were there any doctors you guys had coming in? No. So, yeah, just kind of a difference between how business was when he started versus how we are. There are some similarities, and there are some that are not. The things that aren't similar, and this just changes with the times, and I don't know if this is quite what you were asking, but just in general, conglomerates are in the eyeglass world. Your lens crafters, your Pearl Visions, things like that. So from that standpoint, it is a little different. Eye insurance plans are getting really popular. So from that standpoint, yes, there is a difference. But kind of like what I was saying when I was closing up, the kind of still same things that we care about are still there. And that was what Russ, my grandfather, instilled in the shop. And not to repeat myself too much, but it's doing the right thing just because it is the right thing to do, not to make an extra buck. Yeah. Oh gosh, yeah, 100%, absolutely, and that's what excites me about it, is that I don't want to change it into this streamline, get you in, get you out, get as many glasses sold on a bottom ledger at the end. It's about helping people out, and I think personally more than ever that's more important. And what I love about our clients and our customers that come in is they appreciate that. And they appreciate the service that we offer and that we do actually care, that you can see, I guess would be probably the easiest way to put it. So, yeah. We do. Yeah, we do. He's the TV star. He runs some... We run some advertisements on TV, but now more than ever, digital marketing is becoming important, and that's what we're. When I was kind of saying what we're going to be doing moving forward, it's just kind of keeping up with that stuff. And my sister, she's in Colorado, she couldn't be here, but she is a whiz with that stuff. So she's been incredibly helpful, kind of showing us what we need to be doing and things like that. So. Yeah, we're going to start doing digital stuff and just kind of keep it the way it is. But like I said, still not deviate from, who we are. Yeah.
I have a question for you.
Yes.
Do you have particular doctors around town that you primarily work with, or how do you?
Probably, yeah, we do. As far as our main doctors, besides our own, you guys, George Clavenna, Dr. Clavenna at Des Moines University. No? Okay. Wow. He has been very good about sending us a lot of customers his way. One of the things we pride ourselves on is getting it right. And we've all kind of been there. Sometimes a script gets messed up. Who knows? There's a whole litany of things that can happen. We like to consider ourselves the ones that fix the problem. So when you develop that reputation, you have doctors that will personally send patients your way, knowing that you're going to do right by them, you're going to make sure everything's right, and you're not going to mess it up. So as far as doctors go, George Clavenna is probably the one we work with the most. Get a lot of people from Wolfite. I can't really think of a place that says, no, don't go there. Some places have their own dispensary there. So.
What career did you come from to transition into?
Oh, boy. Okay, so before this, I was selling home mortgages with Wells Fargo. I cannot express to you how excited I'm to be here and not selling mortgages with Wells Fargo. I was in banking before that, and even before that, I was selling power tools in New York City. Who knows? It's kind of a weird path. Ed Schiller.
He was one of the top.
Ed Schiller?
Ed Schiller, Service Optical. He was one of the top ones in this area way back before, probably when your grandpa was doing his moving around, as you called it.
Oh, probably. That was kind of one of the interesting things I found in my research was that Service Optical was a pretty big deal in that. Oh, okay. Oh, cool. Yeah. It was neat learning all that new stuff. That'd probably be a little bit better. Going back that far, would probably be a little bit better question for my dad. I mean, with me only being here for coming on 4 years, I've seen it be pretty stable, or pretty similar, based on. Have you seen the customer base change much since?
I haven't thought about it too much, but in a lot of ways, it's identical. It's just as personal relationships, and in a lot of ways, it hasn't changed a bit. It's very interesting. It's people that, have service and would like to have a relationship with their retail, whether you're getting your car fixed or getting glasses or whatever. So, no, it's been very, I think, a lot of similarities since when Dad opened up. I was always surprised. He remembered people's names. And, I was 18 sitting there, and the place would be jammed, and they were all waiting to see my dad. They were very nice to me, but they wanted to see Russ. So.
And now everyone's waiting to see him. So, was there a reason they picked Russ instead of Russ Mentzer? It sounds like Doug knows.
No one knew his last name.
Oh, simple enough. And it kind of rolls off the tongue. Russ is Optical. Yeah. I was lucky enough to have two parents that didn't pressure me at all into going into the family business. And I think we probably all know someone who would, you're done with high school. Come on, you're working for me. And Russ may have been a little bit like that with my dad. But was just very non-pressure. Go do your thing. Go do what you want. And it was great because I got to see some cool things. I got to experience life. But yeah, when I came back here and I was working for Wells Fargo, I remember just being really unhappy. And it wasn't like anything overnight where I was like, I think it's time to go in. It just kind of something started eating at me. And being back here in Des Moines and seeing everything again and learning about his legacy, it was like, okay, I think it's time to start integrating myself a little bit. And I caught the bug, and here I am.
So as you've gotten into this, has there been any sort of secret that maybe Grandpa had that you didn't know to get everybody to love him, or anything that really jumped out at you that you didn't expect growing up? Or
well, half of our family's kind of nuts, and part of that works into nuts in a fun. Like again, if you knew my uncle, you know kind of what I'm talking about in a good way. And it's not anything you can teach. I'm not saying at all that I have it, but yeah, again, not to repeat myself too much, but not secret ingredient. It's just do right. Do right by your customers and do right by the people that come and see you. Because it is kind of neat to think that people go way out of their way to come see a single person to help them with something. And obviously, in our case, eyeglasses. And yeah, it's a bit of an honor. And to have such a large base in there, you just need to be comfortable with it and kind of love it. And that's what he did so well, which is what led him to be successful for, almost 50 years. So. She asked if we had thought about relocate or opening a second location anywhere. Here and there we kind of have, but I think it would really take away from what we have on 42nd University. I think we'd have to start doing some things that weren't really comfortable to us and weren't like kind of dealing with the quick insurance companies and things like that. We like to keep it nice and simple. And if we expanded and kind of made it a huge brand, it might take away from what makes us special and what Russ used to make it special kind of going on. So we have kicked it around here and there, but not too much. Yeah.
Did your grandfather have a red Corvair convertible?
Yes.
And
yes.
If so, is that still the family, or do you know what happened to it?
Yeah. So yes, it definitely was. Yeah. There's the, yeah. No, unfortunately.
He had a red Corvair convertible. It was beautiful. He had it completely restored, and he rear-ended someone at 63rd and University. And he was so mad, he sold it the next day.
And I got the Chevy Malibu a little long after, kind of. Yeah, my grandfather was big in the car clubs. Yeah, he had a red Chevrolet Malibu after that, which was pretty cool. I remember driving that around. I think one of my uncles got it, and I haven't seen it since. Hopefully it's sitting good.
How many other eye retailers are there in town that do the exact same type of business as you guys? Or are they all primarily like, the doctor and then he owns his own?
There's a few. Urbandale Eye Care is one of them. Awesome doctors, by the way, the Brook family. They work with Urbandale Eye Care. They're awesome people. Urbandale does that. There's a couple places that have a doctor's office and a dispensary. Without getting too technical, there just really isn't a lot of people that do it kind of like how we do it, that focus just 100% on the dispensary side and keep kind of the insurance plans and stuff kind of away from it. Because what that lets us do is complete freedom to pick out the best frames and keep them as low as cost as possible. Find the best possible lenses and keep them at the lowest price possible. A lot of companies now are, like I said, joining forces with these conglomerates, like I was kind of mentioning. And there's markups and there's middlemen and stuff like that. And that's That just ain't our game. So not a lot of people do it nowadays like we do, which, like I said, to me excites me because I know we have something special. And that's why we don't really want to change it too much. Question if there were other kind of competing businesses with us. That'd be a good question for...
Wiley's actually started, Joe, it was opticians, Wiley Opticians, and it was just strictly opticians, and then the doctors had their separate, and they tried to get their business, and then Dad did that, but Yonkers was that for a long time, and there were just a few other ones, but yeah, I have one other contemporary up in Ankeny, actually, that he's an optician, and he does what I do. Other than that, until he started up, we were the only ones that were just strictly opticians and optical. Yeah.
I had an absolute blast doing this. This was so much fun researching old stuff, and moving back here to Des Moines, I kind of found an old love back into the city, so it was cool.
I had gone to Wiley's, and it must have been, and then Russ wasn't there anymore, but I didn't know where Russ had gone. I live kind of in the neighborhood, and one day I was walking down the sidewalk in front of Russ's, and I saw him in there. I just went in there and said, "This is where you are."
Where'd you go?
And I've been there, going there ever since.
I did hear something kind of funny about that, how when he left Wiley's for the last time, Joe wasn't too happy about that, and apparently was very, not very forthright with when people come in like, "Oh, where'd Russ go?" He wasn't jumping with joy to say he went to Russ's Optical. So, yeah. I was going to say, too, before we wrap up, if you guys, I have some pictures up here that are really neat. I have a picture here of my great-grandfather and then obviously Russ, and then a couple other cool artifacts. I did find these, by the way, in a little trunk that my grandmother had. We kind of dubbed these the world's smallest eyeglasses. And there's actually a prescription and a bifocal in here. And we think what happened is someone found these and kind of for fun tested a lab to see if they can make lenses in a bifocal. It's not my prescription, but I think it's a plus. No, anyway, yeah, so something pretty cool if you guys feel free to come up here and take a look at. Thank you guys so much.